Vaheguru
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Sadh-sangat Ji, this is the third day where we're going to spend a bit of time to discuss some of the concepts that Deputy Singh has been talking about over the camp. Maharaj Kirpa, we got a chance to spend another hour together again today. I remember how we came into the Darbar. We came in as Vaheguruji has asked us to come together and do his vichar. We also came together as Sanjogis. We have had love for each other over many lifetimes. So Maharaj Kirpa, we get to meet as a Parvar again. So we're very lucky to be here. So Maharaj Kirpa, we'll start the session now. So as you can see, day one was about understanding the Khel, understanding who am I. And this was discussing how did I turn up and what game am I playing. This game is the game of love that we all play on how we want to meet Sach, whether we want to or whether we don't want to. This is up to us. And then on that day, we just simply understood the game. And then on day two, we were playing the game. And the way we were playing the game was how do we control the mind, control where the mind is either inside or outside the body. And we also looked at different juktis for doing simran, whether we have no control of the mind, whether we have some control of the mind. And today we're going to talk about how do I maintain the simran. So we got today of the camp, tomorrow there's a little bit left of the camp as well. But then after this camp, once the camp is finished, we don't want to be losing all of our simran and get to a point where we're waiting for the next camp. And then we're like addicts. When do I get my next camp fix? So we don't want to have camp fix kind of scenarios. We want to be able to maintain our simran, maintain our jivan all the way through till the next camp where we get another boost in gyan and also in practical simran. So today we're going to talk about, we're going to get quick recap, especially some people were not here over the last 2 days, so quick, tiny recaps. It's always important to do recap because sometimes you're here but you're physically here but not mentally here, so we'll still look at a recap for those that were here and people who weren't here. But we're going to look at this concept in Gurbani called samdrist. Samdrist is how do we stay connected with Sach even while we're actively inside Bhavsagar. So this is an important concept about maintaining our simran, maintaining our Sikhi inside Bhavsagar. So key components we've covered so far is we looked at the body. We understand that the body is made of the 5 elements. The 5 elements exist inside Bhavsagar. Bhavsagar is under the control of Kal. We understand decorating the body doesn't mean the mind has got to another level of achievement or state. Mind state, body state, 2 different things. We also understood that the mind is separate from the body. Mantu Jot Srup hai, apna mool pashan. We also talked about what are the different names of a mind, whether the mind's in an enlightened stage, whether it's moving between Bhavsagar and Mokti Hut, whether it's moving inside Bhavsagar, what is called Surti. We know when it's called Buddh, when intellect's being applied. We know all of these different concepts now about what the mind is. But most importantly, we know that the mind is part of Sach. And then we also looked at the game. So this diagram where you got live and tat, live tat do rahe, hukmi kar kumai. And it also talks about in Bhavsagar, Ten Guni Sansar Param Sutta, which essentially means if you're inside any of these, your mind is asleep. So it's the Panch Jor that are running the Khel while your mind's, like Bhai Sahib was saying, you're being captured, you're inside a jail, and they just keep feeding you sharab. And the sharab doesn't have to be alcohol like we know it. The sharab might be greed, the sharab might be lust, the sharab might be anger, the sharab might be ego. They keep feeding it to you to the point that you realize that this is actually all there is. There's nothing else to life. So this game is what we've been looking at over the last couple of days. And if you notice in Bhai Sahib's Katha, he mentions it every single time. This is the game we play every single time. So it's very important, if you take anything away, that you understand that diagram, because that is the Khel we play the moment we take a breath inside this body. Underpinning all this, we've been looking at the Shabad. We look at different types of Shabad. So we've been talking about the Shabad of Wah, Guru, the Shabad that we speak with our tongue. We've been talking about Shabads you hear internally. We've been talking about Ban Shabads. We've been talking about Anhad Shabads. We've been talking about different Shabads. We've been talking about these and we've been practically applying it. Most important, practically applying it. There's no point just collecting gyan and lots of gyan without doing the actual practice of simran. So we've been Maj Kripa doing both. And when we're doing both, we bring all of these things together. The body, we understand where Bhavsagar is, the Turkutti and the Nabbi. We understand the Kales inside this area. We understand the mind exists inside this area. We might understand the mind is not allowed to be inside this area for too long. We know the mind's got hukum to be here, but it's also told you only have hukum to do good things inside this space. And your aim is to find me inside this space, to come back home. So we know this is Bhavsagar. Huh? We know that this is the catch-up. This is just a recap of what we've been doing. The other part that we looked at yesterday, we looked at essentially the energy channels inside the body. As we breathe, we take our swas, and depending upon how we balance the swas, everything's balanced. So Bhai Sahib talked about the eyes, the amount of light inside each eyes need to be balanced. The amount of air going through each nostril needs to be balanced. And we recognize now that if we breathe too much from the right-hand side, Ida, that's Tamogun. And if we breathe too much from the left-hand side, that's Pingala, the blue line, that's Rajogun. And when we do Simran, we wah, gru, wah, gru, wah, gru. We start to manage that breath through our mouth, and it balances the breath. So if we do Simran, we'll balance our breath, and then check. You'll notice your nostrils are breathing evenly, balanced. And now where are you? Sukhamana. If you're sitting on Sukhamana, now you are realizing what Sattugun is. Sattugun is where? Nabbi. Nabbi is where? Belly button. Focus is where? Belly button. These are all the things that we are learning over the last couple of days. And this is our new Jivan. We're building our Jivan in understanding Gurmat, not Manmat. So slowly, we're starting to understand these concepts. So before we start looking at what Samdrist is, let's remember how to do Simran. So remember, we always talked about the body must be relaxed. If the body's not relaxed, you can't focus the mind. The mind will think about your knee or your legs or your arms or your back. You'll start thinking about all these body parts because they're in constant pain. So if you're in pain or you're not comfortable, please be comfortable. Sit against a wall, stand up, put your legs out, be in any state that makes you more comfortable. And then what we're going to do is, before we do Simran, we're going to remember Sattugun is on the Nabbi. So we're going to put our Dhyan. Dhyan is your focus on the Nabbi. And now we're going to close our eyes, and we're going to do a few minutes of Simran. But this is only for us to remember the last two lessons, and then we're going to now look at Samdrist. So this is only for us to remember where we got to, so we don't forget all the things we learned so far. So relax the body, put your focus on the belly button first, so you know you start to centralize yourself, start to get balanced. And now, when you breathe in, we're going to say Wah. We're going to pull the belly button in very softly, not too much. And we say Guru. We're going to breathe out, let the air come out, and let go of the belly button. So I say again, focus on the belly button, breathe in, bring your belly button in slightly, say Wah. When you breathe out, say Guru, and let go of the belly button. Karloshru. Wah, Guru, 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 Wah, Guru,
Wahguru, 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 Wahguru,
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So how do we stay balanced within the chaos of Maya, of Bhavsagar, of Kalyug? How do we remain balanced? Remember, balanced in how we breathe. That balances our thoughts, because if we remain in Sattvagun, we're always having good thoughts. And if we remain in Sattvagun, we're always remaining in Hukum. If we remain on Sattvagun, we're also remaining on Live the Rasta. If we're remaining in Sattvagun, we're doing all the good things. You know? So if we can recognize we're in Sattvagun, or whether we're in Rajagun, or whether we're in Tamagun, at least we know what game we're playing. So here we're going to try to look at how does the Gurmukh stay connected to Vaheguru while remaining in Maya. So Maharaj Kirpa now, Vaheguru gives us lots of gifts. First gift we always talked about was the fact that we have this human body, the fact that this body it allows for Vaheguru to come and sit inside the body. So you do enough simran, the jal comes off the tongue, Amrit will start coming. This is the only Jivan that allows for you to have these experiences, to hear Shabads, to taste Amrit, see Vaheguru, have his Prakash, have his Darshan, and see Vaheguru in everyone. This is the only body that allows this to happen. So we've already got a massive gift. But we're going to look at the gifts from Vaheguru in two forms. The physical gifts, which means you can see these in the world. Some depends on your avastha, some don't. And subtle gifts, are the sukham gifts, the gifts internally that we get from Vaheguru, and how the Gurmukh will use these gifts. We've broken these up into things we take for granted, which is because we're human and human by nature, we get used to things. Once we get used to things, we forget that it's different. We forget that it's unique. We just believe it's part of everyday's culture. So if you take someone from, I don't know, the 1800s and say, here's hot water out of a tap, they'll be like, this is a miracle. Whereas we just say, this is getting an energy bill at the end of the month, but this is all it is. We think it's fine. So things we take for granted, inside the physical world is the human body. We see it as a body, as a sarir. Gurbani sees it as a temple, a mandir. We have sanjogis. We talked a lot about sanjogis, and this is very important. These are our life partners. We take that for granted as well, our life partners around us. We're going to look at these. And then we also look at vichar, the ability to think. This sounds really strange, but Bhai Sahib mentioned it as well. He says, you're going to come out from sun, so you can come from Chotapad, that sun state where the mind was given birth to, and you can come into Bhavsagar with your ability to think. And with your ability to think, you can decide whether you're going to live the rasta or tat the rasta. And then we're going to also look at things we achieve through effort and also kirpa. So Maharaj has to do his kirpa. It's only, all these gifts that we talk about are from Sach, and Sach owns these gifts. So he can give them to you, he can take them away. These are not things you own. These are having faith, ability to believe that there is God, there is Sach, knowing the gurus, and we talk about who is guru, Sadh-sangat, the ability for Vaheguru to call you into the Sadh-sangat. No one comes by their own accord. Vaheguru invites you. And ability to do seva of others in all forms of such. Then we're going to look at the subtle gifts. So ability to, again, things we take for granted. Gurbani Vichar. This is, we all do, we read Gurbani, but do we do Khoj of Gurbani? There's a different understanding. Akath Katha is people who have experienced something, able to tell you that story of the Pyar that they went through, that rasta of Pyar, and doing Katha, Akath Katha Vichar. So we take those things for granted. We listen to it, We read it, but do we absorb it? And then do we experience it? Those are different conversations, those are different things. And then things we achieve through effort and kirpa again, these new avastha that come with the mind's maturity. Mind's maturity of being able to do simran, to never stopping your simran, meaning your simran is continuous and never stops. That's a different avastha. Ability to taste amrit. I'm not talking about amrit from Panch Pyare. In this scenario, I'm talking about internal amrit. Shabad, being able to hear the different types of Shabad. And prakash, being able to see such. So we're going to talk about all these things, which are the ability, having these gifts, all of these different gifts, give you the ability to stay samdrist, which means connected to Waheguru while in Maya. Okay. So let's look at these. We're going to, because just in the interest of time, we're only going to look at the areas in blue or highlighted, which we're going to look at the gurus, faith, Sadh-sangat, seva. We're going to focus primarily on those, just in the interest of time. So if we look at the gurus, in Gurbani it says your first guru is your parents. So we talk about Sanjog, we talk about the fact that we're all here through pyar from our Pishre Karams, our ability to meet in different life forms. We may have met as Kire, we may have met as mammals, and we may have loved each other in some shape or form which brought us together. But then there's the Sanjogis that you're born with. Those Sanjogis are ones you've shown so much pyar to, that you've been born together, to play together. These are your Jivan Sathis. These Jivan Sathis, you've been born to play together, to meet such together in one household. And what do? We don't talk about it. What do? We talk about everything else, but this one topic we refuse to talk about. But the first guru is your parents, mom and dad. And then the second guru, Pavan Guru, the ability to breathe. Waheguru, everyone said, we heard Pai Sahib said, all this space, this Kali space that we see, Waheguru exists here. And every swas you take, Waheguru puts that swas in your mouth, and he asks, which way do you want to go, live or tat? And then you spend your swas how you want. But Waheguru exists here. This Pavan Guru is for everyone. So these two, if you're Gurmukh or your Manmukh, these two are gurus that everyone has. Everyone least recognizes and can see. What I'm talking about here is physical gifts you can see. Parents, Pavan Guru. And then third, Guru Granth Sahib Ji. We come here, we do our darshan of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and we also, that's the physical darshan, not the sukham darshan, physical darshan. But you have done that, you've achieved this physically. But you have Guru Granth Sahib, which has got writing and scriptures from gurus, the actual gurus have written this, and Bhagats have written this. So their whole experience of their love, their Katha, or how to meet such, is all in there. Inside Guru Granth Sahib Ji, there's Guru Bani Guru. And that Guru, we can all do Koj from every day. When we do our part, we can do Koj. And Shabad Guru, when we say, Why Guru, Why Guru. All these gurus apply to people who have faith, don't apply to people who don't believe there's a God. They won't look for these things. So there's 5 items, there's 5 gurus that if we want to stay samdrist, there's 5 options that you can go to physically. This doesn't matter about your avastha, doesn't matter how much simran you've done, it's just these things are your kind of birthright, these are given to you. So this is physical gifts of gurus. Then when we look at faith in Gurbani, Simran, and the game, because faith, the reason why we put it into a physical gift is when someone of faith comes into the room, you can see this. When someone of no faith comes into the room, you can see this as well. These are things that you can physically go and see. You'll recognize that these are 2 different people. And the reason why we look like this, Gas Dari, got the star, is because we have a different jivan from people who don't. You're not saying if you're not got Gas Dari, you can still have a good avastha, but we have a roop that Waheguru and Guru Gobind Singh Ji has given us. So everyone in the dunya can see this person has faith for me. So if you do something to this person, you come and report to me. You know? So faith is very important. So in Gurbani it says, when you have faith, according to Gurbani, faith is not blind belief, but deep intuitive trust in Waheguru, the Guru, and the path of Naam. So it's deep faith, it's not ritualistic. Without faith, there's no spiritual progress. Those who have no faith in the Lord's name, the messenger of death does not spare them. So we know this through a lot of the Katha that's been happening. And why? That faith, that there is something beyond the swas, there's something beyond the daytime when I'm awake and playing this khel, there is something when I go to bed at night, there is something in Mokti Hut, there are these things. It gives you stability. It allows you to balance between the world of Gristi Jeevan and such. It allows you to balance between the two. So having faith is super, super, super important. But having that faith is the starting baseline. It's a base foundation that we require to build spiritual progress. But having faith helps you remain samdrist. Then, another physical gift that we see is Sadh-sangat. So this sangat that we're seeing today. So this is, Sadh-sangat's called a classroom. So what we've been doing is, it's actually felt like a lecture. So when Bhai Sahib goes up with the whiteboard, it's literally a teacher writing based on the syllabus. Gurbani is more than a syllabus. But based on the teachings of Gurbani, you've got the teacher translating this to the class. And that classroom is understanding. So the soul, or the surti, or the man, or the buddh, remember, or the jot, all these, depends on your vasta, becomes a student. Naam is the lesson. Simran is practiced according to the techniques inside Gurbani. So what we've been doing the last 3 days, we've been doing this. How to recognize the Sadh-sangat, because there's sangat everywhere. How do you know that's Sadh-sangat and that's not Sadh-sangat? Sadh-sangat kaisi janiye jitte ikko naam vikhaniye. So where the one name is being shown to you, the one name is being practiced, that through according to Gurbani is the Sadh-sangat. And Guru Amar Das goes further, the same ang, Sadh-sangat kaisi paye, kinne bad pagi paye. So you're so blessed, so lucky to enter that Sadh-sangat where there's education on the Naam and there's practice of the Naam. So I was talking to people today as well. We said, this is the only classroom where we do galna about the mind. We do vichar about the mind. So in this classroom, the mind can talk to or read Guru Granth Sahib Ji, can talk to the sants, can talk to teachers, can talk to other mans, can talk to other jots and understand their care, understand their progress. But if we leave the Gurdwara, if we leave the Sadh-sangat and we go down to the high street, we'll be talking about everything else. Only in this classroom do we spend time to really understand the mind and spend time learning from each other's minds. Yeah, we're not worried about the physical appearance. Jyot is talking to Jyot here. So again, this is all to, well, trying to bring it back, all to remain samdrist, which essentially means being able to remain balanced, remembering that you're part of such. And these are all physical. Remember, nothing yet is sukham. All of this is physical things that depend, not to think about avastha, not to think about maturity of Simran. We'll look at that later. These things are for everyone. You don't even have to be sick. You can just come to the Gurdwara, you can just go see all of these objects, all these entities, all these energies available for everyone. So there's no qualification, there's no barrier to entry. This is simply the things that are available as to help you remain connected to such while in Bhavsagar. So another one here is seva. 3 levels of seva in Gurbani. So physical seva, like we're doing downstairs, people are cleaning the Gurdwara, people are doing langar seva, people are doing jora, cleaning shoes, cleaning bathrooms. This physical seva involves doing physical tasks with your hands, cleaning, cooking. The seva is done while remembering Waheguru. So like Bhai Sahib said, he said something which I thought was amazing. He said, when someone's doing seva and they're also having the Shabad in their mind, so Waheguru, Waheguru, while they're scrubbing or cleaning, the Chitragup's not writing the Likha then. But the Dharmaraj is not judging. Waheguru himself is judging at that point. because you're remembering such. So there's a different thing that's happening, because the seva is not the same as going and working outside and being paid for something. That's a very different thing. That's work, that's kamai. This is seva. Seva has to be done both internally, externally. Mental seva, so seva done through the mind, means keeping your thoughts in service of the Guru, surrendering to Waheguru. So this is when we're starting to do simran. Wah, Guru, 5 to 5:30, we did simran half an hour straight, and everyone was doing it loud. Wah, Guru, as long as your mind, while the air's coming in, Wah, Guru, when it goes out, both in and out, that entire period, you're focused on the sound. As long as you're focused, that's seva. So we're thinking about all the different types of seva we're doing. We're doing it all, and if you notice, we're doing it together. We're doing it all as a parivar. Spiritual seva, which is Gyan seva, this is done for certain people. This is at an avastha. This is the first one you're seeing now at an avastha. So this is when you get to the Sadh level, avastha, Sadh. This is where you're doing simran at a certain avastha inside the body. So seva beyond action, seva through spiritual absorption, when you start to detach from born. So this is the highest form of seva. So before we look at the subtle gifts that are given to us, let's appreciate what we've got so far. We've got so much gyan over the last couple of days, so much understanding of the body, the types of things that are available to us, no matter who we are, no matter what level of avastha we are, no matter all of our backgrounds. All these things are available to us. So before we go on to the next part, it's important to keep the kamai, to keep the practice going on with the gyan. So let's do a bit more simran. Again, remember, if you got uncomfortable, please get comfortable, relax the body. We're going to put focus back onto the belly button, so focus comes back into the body on the nabbi. And as we breathe in, belly button in slightly, why? As we breathe out, Guru, belly button, let go. Karlo shuru.
Why, Guru, 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 Waheguru, 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 Waheguru.
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So we looked at the physical gifts to remain samdrist. Remember, topic is samdrist, remaining attached to such, attached to Waheguru, while in Maya. We looked at the physical objects, the physical energies, the physical entities, the gurus even that are in the physical world, in the physical form that anyone can have. So we looked at those. Now we're going to switch and look at the subtle gifts that Waheguru's given us. That in reality, everyone's already got. So everyone inside this Darbar Sahib, everyone outside this, everyone in this county, everyone on this planet already has all these things we're going to talk about. The fact is, we made PR for the Panch Chor. The Panch Chor has slowly made you forgotten that they exist. And we become, like Bhai Sahib said today, servants to the Panch Chor. Even though they're servants, we become servants to them. So you should bear in mind these things, although everyone may feel, oh, they're so far away, they're already inside you. Just have to do the kamai so that you can remove the jal from your tongue, remove the jal from your ears, remove the jal from your eyes. Slowly you can have all these things. These things are already in the body. So again, we're going to focus on the things that require effort and kirpa, effort from outside, kirpa from Sach. We're going to look at Amrit. Where does Amrit come from? We're talking not about the Amrit from the Panch Pyare, we're talking about Amrit internally through meditation. We're going to look at what is this avastha of continuous simran? What's this avastha where simran is always happening? How does this happen? What is Anhat Shabad? Where does this come from? We're also going to look at Prakash. Everyone talks about Prakash. What is Prakash? So we're going to talk about these concepts. So when we talk about Amrit, the Gurmukhs that taste Amrit, they don't go very far from that point. They never leave away from where the Amrit is. So Amrit is inside the Daswadwar, and as you're doing your Simran, slowly, Maharaj Kripa, the Amrit will come into your mouth. And the Gurmukhs, as they're slowly drinking this Amrit, is the first time the man becomes strong. Like Bhai Sahib said today as well. He said, our whole life, we've been living our life, I'm 40 years old, 40 years, I've given my food to the Panch Chor. I've given all the body khrak. I've given all the nourishment through healthy or unhealthy food, eating it, and all that khrak goes to the Panch Chor. Because the Panch Chor own this body. This whole kale, this whole sarir is owned and part of the Panch Chor. They own this. And Kal owns all this. So the khrak of the mind is Amrit. But if we've never drunk or had Amrit before, then your mind is starving. It's in a starving state. Like Bhai Sahib said, you'll be working, and you're working so hard for the khrak of others. You've never worked for your own khrak. But when the Gurmukhs get a chance to drink Amrit, they never go far from this. They remember, where is it I put my dhyan that the Amrit will come? What is it? What Shabad do I attach myself to that I can start to taste Amrit? And the Gurmukhs can taste it in two ways. I'm talking only about the internal. There's third, which is go to the Panch Pyare and actually take Amrit. The internal way is as you're doing Simran, Wah, Gru, as you're talking about Simran, as you're doing Gurbani Vichar, as you're reading Gurbani, as you're listening to Katha, any of these things, as these are happening, Amrit will naturally come into your mouth. You'll naturally taste it in the bottom of your mouth. The bottom part will all be sweet all the time. Or, if this is not enough, remember Waheguru exists inside this space around us. This space, Waheguru puts the pawn in your mouth and decides when you decide how to spend it. If Waheguru's kush, how you spend it. As you're breathing in, as the air touches your tongue, that air will be sweet too. So you can take Amrit out of the Brahm. So people staying samdrist, they can very easily stay samdrist by just putting their dhyan in certain places and they can taste Amrit. So this Amrit really helps. And by tasting Amrit, like I said earlier, mind becomes strong. When mind is strong, it's harder for the panch jaw to put furne. Furne are unprovoked thoughts, thoughts that you didn't ask for. Not vichar. Vichar is when you are contemplating. Furne is when these thoughts come to you. So by having Amrit and constantly staying close to the Amrit, drinking it not once or twice, constantly, as much as possible, the mind becomes more and more pavitr, the tongue becomes pavitr as well. So it's very important to understand that, and there's lots of people. This is why we come to camps, these types of camps. There's hundreds, maybe thousands of people in the UK that taste Amrit in these two ways. So we can ask them, how do you taste it? What does it taste like? Tell me, how do you take Amrit out of Brahm? Tell me, how do you take Amrit when the Katha is happening? Tell me, how does this happen? And you can ask them how individually, in groups, however you like, they'll all tell you the same thing. So this is not something that is make-believe or something that people are maybe experiencing. There's thousands of people having this, thousands and thousands of people. So it's very important to get to this avastha through your simran, Amrit avastha, Amrit Didat. That's a super important avastha. The other ones, when we look at continuous simran, Anhad Shabad, and Prakash, it's very hard to talk about these separately because all of these are on the same spectrum of maturity. So remember we talked about simran maturity, meditation maturity, the maturity of how much simran you've done and how pakka the minds come in simran and how clean the mind is will determine your simran maturity. Just the same way, the more qualifications you have, the more qualified you become. So the same becomes in simran. The more clean the mind is, the more mature it becomes. So we're going to look at these three in the same context, but we're going to look at it on a spectrum. So your simran maturity will show you how samdrist you are. Yeah? So when we're doing, I want to make sure everyone understands what I mean by that. So I'm going to repeat. Your simran maturity, meaning your meditation maturity, will determine how samdrist, connected to such while you're in Bhavsagar, you are. Yes, very important to understand this. So we've covered already in the class Saskra Simran. Wah, gru, beating the mind into shape, telling the mind who's now controlling the mind, who's not controlling the mind, understanding the care. This is Saskra Simran, loud Simran with the tongue, listening with the ears. We've covered Sasa Simran, we're slowly bringing the sound into the body, whispering. We'll be doing this, and we also did it where we did it very slowly. All these things we did between Saskras and Sasas, we've all experienced these. We've even done Antargat Simran, which is internally. And if you notice, from Antargat, you have this samdrist state emerges. So why is this merging at a later state of Simran maturity? So level 1, verbal Simran, where you're physically saying Simran, is tied to the body and the air. So it's tied to porn, it's tied to the body, your body is moving, your body is speaking, your physical ears, your ears are listening. So it's tied to the body, right? So the mind is only doing Simran when the body is doing Simran. When you're doing Saskras, wah, gru, you can't do that type of Simran everywhere. You can do it here, and we can do it at home, you can do it in certain locations. You can't do it in a meeting at work. You can't do it in certain locations. So the simran, you still have the effect it has on samdris is duality remains because it's attached to the body. These two jugdis are naturally attached to the body. So it's very hard to remain connected to the Shabad while moving around in the world, you know? So you have to go antargat, which is the level 2, mental simran. This is where the mind is doing simran. Antargat is when the mind is doing simran. So at this state, simran begins to influence thoughts, creating inner stillness. So people have seen this because we were doing simran. I was talking to Panji earlier. We were doing simran. Wah, gru, wah, gru, wah, gru. And then we slowly went, wah, gru, wah, gru. Slowly. And as we were doing that, at that level, a lot of people were starting to go to sleep. A lot of people in this Sangat today were starting to go to sleep. So we've seen people go antargat, you know? And we can also remember the man speaks to man here, Jyot speak to Jyot here. You can speak to each other, say, when we got to that level, what happened to you? You can ask each other. There's some balance, but remember, we're still in Satogun. Subtle ego still exists. So there's still some balance, but we started to go internal. But from this point, we start to recognize how to do simran internally. Even when I'm doing something, I can still have my simran going inside. So even when I'm working, when I'm talking to people, when I'm doing Gristi Jeevan, I can still have naturally simran happening inside. And once this becomes mature, once your antargat simran becomes mature, becomes a bit more pakka, it goes into continuous simran. So the default state is when you're taking a breath, simran's going wah, gru, wah, gru. I go and do some work, or I'm talking to someone and this is taking up my mental space. I'm talking to someone, it requires me to think and do stuff. The moment it stops, my default is back to simran. Wah, gru, wah, gru, wah, gru. This continuous simran, very, very important. So like Benji was saying, we did 1.5 hour simran. She said, once you leave here, continue your simran. Don't go and talk about things that are unnecessary. Keep the dhyan inside the body. And if you're able to do that, dhyan remains inside the body, dhyan attaches to the simran. Very, very important. But at this point, once you start to get a little bit more mature, you go from antargat to continuous simran. And then there's even deeper stages. So remember, samdris is starting to emerge. This ability to stay connected to the Shabad while doing work. But when you get to a further avastha, called Rom Simran, as Bhai Sahib's talked about this as well, where every cell in your body is saying, Wah, Guru, Wah, Guru, Wah, Guru. Not the tongue, every cell is vibrating that Shabad. And you can feel this. And so, when do you know that Rom's happening? People talk about auras. So when a Gurmukh comes into a room, suppose we're in a normal room, our living room at home, and a Gurmukh walks into the room, the whole atmosphere changes inside that room. Why is the atmosphere changing? Their Rom Simran is not being chanted by their tongue, it's being chanted by every cell in their body, and it changes the aura around them, and that aura fills the room. Rom. Once you get to Rom, you have the ability to get a new avastha called Rakya Chakkar. This is a kind of force field that remains around you. When Furne thoughts from other people come, it all bounces back off. Everything bounces off. This Rakya Chakkar, very important to achieve in Bhavsagar. From Rom, so this is level 3, the deep absorption, where the Gurmukh begins to live in the Sej Avastha. So Rom's more of a Sej Avastha. Naturally balanced states. Emotions are processed from stillness, and samdris starts to integrate with your Gristi Jeevan a bit more. So your internal balance is there. But then, we've heard this a lot. Bhai Sahib talks about this a lot. He constantly talks about making sure you go from your simran to listening to the Shabads. There's different Shabads. We've talked about this. We talked about the Shabad that we do just now. Wah, gru. That's the Shabad. Another Shabad is when you hear the Pan Shabads. And we talked about where does the Pan Shabad sound start from? Nabbi. The Spanj Shabad starts here, and as you go to Mukti Hut, you realize it. You can hear these. And also, we talked about another Shabad, Anhad Shabad. This is a Shabad sound that you can hear from Mukti Hut and also in Bhavsagar. You hear it all the time. This is a sound that will never stop. So whenever there's something happening that you want to feel that I want to reattach to such, just listen to the Shabad. Back to such. So you're always kind of in two places. One, you're still in Mukti Hut, and you're also in Gristi Jeevan in Bhavsagar. You're in both places at the same time. And the last one, when the Gurmukh sees Vaheguru's Prakash form, where you go and sit inside that Prakash, that's for the few that Maharaj himself calls into his Hazuri and says, come and sit with me in my Prakash. So you're inside Vaheguru at that point. So these are the different states of Simran maturity. And what I wanted to talk about is what's the difference then, you know? So if we go back to a previous slide, I think it was day 1 where we looked at it. Can you remember we talked about, in Gurbani it talks about the mind being like a monkey, and the monkey's trapped inside the clay pot from the captor, and the captor being Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Mohankar, and Kal. We're so attached, we've put our hand inside the trap, and we've attached ourselves to it, even though all we need to do is let go and release ourselves, and we can walk away. We ourselves are in love with the trap. We ourselves want to be there, so we kept hold of this trap. So this mind is in this trap. So what's the difference then? On the other side, Gurmukhs who have been to such high avastha, they describe themselves more like a spider. A spider's home is in its web. The web exists in Mukti Hut. And when the spider comes down from Mukti Hut, it comes into Bhavsagar and does all of its Gristi Jeevan, whether it needs food, whether it needs to play, whether it needs to do any task, whatever it does, the spider will come down from its home in the web into Gristi Jeevan, into Bhavsagar. But where is the spider's dhyan? Its dhyan is on that one string that holds the spider between Bhavsagar and its home. If anything happens, any little wobble, any little flick, any little wiggle, the spider can see it, whoop, straight back. So we've got to ask ourselves, are we inside a trap or are we inside our home? And we can only do that when we start to really recognize all of these different levels of Simran. And we've got to understand, are we playing a trap? Are we still inside the trap of Kal? Are we still super attached to all these things? And it's okay to say yes, no problem. It's better to say yes than to say no. And if we are inside this trap, it's better then to say, okay, if I'm in this trap, what helps me to get out of the trap? And then you realize it's what we've been doing for the past 3 days. It's the Shabad Guru. Wah, Gru, Wah, Gru, Wah, Gru. And we do it loud because we realize we're in a trap. You got so much pyar now for such, so much pyar for getting out of the trap that now people are screaming to do Simran. The people are, when we're doing Simran loud, people are screaming, Wah, Guru, because they want to come out of the trap. But we got to realize, and it's okay to say, but I'm in a trap. But at least now you know. So we spent some days together, we started to learn about the Khel, we started to learn about the understanding of where the Shabads exist, what is the Shabads. We started understanding more about what is our mind, whether it's called a mind, whether it's called a Jot, whether it's called a Surti, at what times these things are called. But the more and more we understand and learn and understand this Gyan, the more our Simran will help, because we know how we're applying the Simran. We know what the impact the Simran is having on us. So it's very important to have Gyan, but also have Simran. So these 3 studies, I'd say these 3 lessons, the day 1, which was understand, day 2, which was playing with the different juktis, and then day 3, maintain. These 3 lessons are the same lessons we've been learning for over 15 years, maybe longer. The same 3 lessons, still learning today. So we don't want to say, okay, we learned this, can you please teach me something else now? Then we've gone into the mode of using Gyan as entertainment. These 3 lessons, as long as you haven't got to Prakash, these 3 lessons are so important that you remember them, because it's the same lessons you're going to be learning constantly, again and again and again and again. And you have Gurmukhs who will go from this lesson, go all the way to another country and learn this same lesson again there. Why? Because their mind is still in the trap. So they leave, and once they're left, Carl puts Jord on. Carl starts to put the jal over your eyes and over your ears and over your emotions, all this over again. You forget you learned this. This is the lesson that's easiest to forget, because you're fighting to remember this lesson. Other lessons we're not fighting for. When we learn a degree, when we learn A-levels, whatever we're learning, we're not fighting to learn this. We're just fighting to remember it. This one, you'll not only forget it, you'll actually act against it. And then you realize it wasn't me acting against it. My mind's asleep. It's the Panch Jord that are owning this body. It's very important to start recognizing. So even if your simran is less, but you start to recognize, then you start to play. Once you start to play, you start to experience. So it's important to start to do each bit by bit, recognizing where you are and being honest with yourself. Where are you? Because this care, like Bhai Sahib said, the swas that you're taking, the way you spend that swas is only for you. It can't be for anyone else. You can't give it to anyone else. You can't give your swas to any loved one. You can't give your kamai to any loved one. The kamai we make in the real world, like this physical world, this physical world kamai, I can split my savings with everyone. When it comes to sukham, I can't split my savings with anyone. I'm playing by myself, so there's no reason not to be honest, because you're only being honest or fake with yourself. So it's very important, recognize these 3 lessons. Gurmukh's been learning the same lessons for 15, 20 plus years. So please, please, please spend time understanding and recognizing the lessons. So we're going to come up to time shortly. We only got about 5 or 6 minutes left. So now we've got still some time together. Let's try to remember such. Try to do Korj of the Shabad. When we do Simran and we're doing it loud, we're doing Korj of the Shabad. We're starting to understand the Shabad. We're starting to lean into the Shabad. So let's all start again. Relax the body. Make sure you're not uncomfortable. Lean if you need to lean. Put your focus on your nabbi, belly button. Breathing in, belly button in. Why? Breathing out, release the belly button, release the air. Guru. Karlo shuru.
Why? Guru. 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 Why? Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
So Sadh-sangat ji, a lot of people have been asking for copies of these slides. This is all Guru's gyan, not our gyan. So if anyone wants these slides, please take it, no problem. The way to probably best get in touch with folks that are circulating this is if you go downstairs at the entrance, there's this kind of standing poster. There's like lots of QR codes. There's different ways to connect to the organizers of this event, and then they can distribute. If you get onto any of those channels, we can figure out a way to get this stuff to you if you're interested. We just want to make sure that there's a way for people to get this gyan if they are interested in it. So before we finish, I just want to say thank you, and also please forgive us for any mistakes, anything if you believe we did anything of misguiding people, it's not our intention. Anything we misrepresented, any words we said incorrectly, anything that may have offended anyone is not our intention whatsoever. So please, please, please forgive us. I thank you, Sadh-sangat ji, for your time.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.